music here is so wonderful. It's so beautiful. It's a lot more than just notes and words. I have to say that. Some days I can't figure out exactly, but I know Spirit's right with it. And it is a spiritual experience when y'all get up here like that. All of you, all of you. Thank you, thank you. Did anybody make any resolutions or affirmations for the new year?
Oh, yeah.
Did?
At least 30 of them.
What?
At least 30 of them.
Well, I want to tell you about the story of the guy. And he made his resolution, and he's praying to God, and he said, may my bank account be fat and my body thin. And then he said, oh, please, God, don't get it mixed up again like last year. That could have been me. No, actually, one of my affirmations, it probably wouldn't apply to anybody else, but I do a thing, and I started it last year, and I now plan to just keep on doing it. But it says, I am ageless and timeless, and my memory gets better every year. I had another one that might interest you, that this year I'm going to bound up these steps just like Carter. I was watching one day, and it was just like in a run. She hit it. And I said, I wish I could do that.
Look how good you're doing. Yes.
I am doing better. There's something about the new year, and probably you figured it out watching me. It's Thursday night, right? Thursday night. That I get so excited when I get to the new year and get to burn up in the burning bowl the things that I want to dismiss. I have to do part of them at home. It would create too much of a fire to bring the whole thing, But there are things that, you really would like to just shoo away for the next year. Things like anxiety, any kind of fear, things of that sort. But actually, every moment is a fresh new start. But there's something so special about the new year coming about and about our affirmations. I don't call them anything else. There are other people who have another name for it, but I don't really associate with that. I'm thinking more of just affirming the good that is a possibility. But I take that really seriously to begin with, and I get so excited about it that it's really hard to contain myself. But partly what it is taking a fresh new look at the possibilities of the year that it's on its way. And my feeling is, and I can speak for myself, you never get too old to feel all the unlimited possibilities of a new year. I mean, it's a matter, I think, partly of just believing that we are part of that divinity that could just do about anything we choose. And that's sort of what I'm going to talk about today. Because I believe that God has spread the table before us. And that it's like a never-ending banquet. Think about that. The fathers, this is from Charles Fillmore, and I wanted to read this because it sort of struck me. The Father's desire for us is unlimited good. Somehow, I believe that with all my heart. I think in the last message, that I did, I had 10 or 11 things that just from the quotes from the Gospels where Jesus is explaining like his mission when he says, I'm here to bring good news. I mean, I have to believe that's part of what we do in Harmony, for example. We bring good news. We create a good feeling. We create the type of feeling that if a person is here, they're going to feel better than when they came in. I do every time. I mean, there's not a single exception to that. When I come in and I'm part of what you're doing and what you're feeling and the love that you're sending for, I feel better. But it's part of God's smorgasbord for all of us. There was something very interesting in a movie. It's Auntie Mame, and I can't quote exactly what she said about it because of the words she used, but it was life is a smorgasbord. Okay, life is a banquet, but there's some poor soul who's just down there under the table taking the crumbs. And the word, it was not poor soul, was it? It was, okay. But anyway, that's the idea. There's a banquet, but that doesn't mean that everybody's going to take a part in it. But maybe just the crumbs that are left, because somehow the way we see ourselves, and we don't see God as making all this available to every living being that she puts on the planet. Okay. Was that funny? There were no men clapping in that, I noticed. Oh, were you clapping? Okay, good.
I embrace the goddess within.
Somebody had asked me, I was telling that I tell my jokes to God before I tell them to the church. And somebody asked me one day, said, well, how does God take that? And I said, she thinks I'm hilarious. But along with this statement, the Father's desire for us is unlimited good. Then he tells a little excerpt or two out of the prodigal son, saying that here is a picture of God's relationship to humankind, to mankind, womankind, humankind, okay? The prodigal son went forth, leaving the father behind, and absolutely made a miserable mess of his life. He winds up, he's feeding for some stranger, feeding his pigs. And that's the lowest, feeding the swine is the lowest point in Hebrew world that you could reach. But then he came to himself, it says, and he decided, he actually made a plan to get back to the father, and he was rehearsing, going along, saying, Father, I have sinned against heaven, I've sinned against you, all of this confession that he was making. But when he arrived, the father didn't recognize any of the wrong. He simply sent, and here's the list of things, if I can find it. Bring the best robe, put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet, and bring the fatted calf, and let's have a feast and celebrate. This is Jesus' story about God's reaction to humankind when humankind gets completely off the track and makes all kinds of mistakes and makes a miserable mess out of his life. It's as though it's invisible. It's invisible to God, and God thinks of this thing going back to emphasize unlimited good is the only plan for us. Unlimited good. Now, Jesus made this statement that sort of confirms the statement that I made from Charles Fillmore when he said, if you who err know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? In other words, that's the God plan of being a part of everything that we are. Now, that's what God does. Now, the next step is up to us. The next step was up to the prodigal son. He's in a mess. God isn't going to go take him out of that mess, even though all the good is laid out for him. But the prodigal son said, okay, I'm thinking about at my father's house, there is food and enough to spare. And here I'm starving. This is a condition not just of this story, but this can be a condition of people who haven't really found a spiritual path. No spiritual path. And they can be totally, totally rich and totally, totally miserable. And I have seen this so many times, more than I wish to say. That's why that Charles Fillmore, the founder of Unity, used to say that what we need, or what I pray for, is just enough to fill every need, but not enough to overflow to where I'll be occupied seeing about it. In other words, he doesn't want there to be enough wealth to disturb him, but yet enough to supply every need that he could dream of. Well, that's a pretty good situation to be in. But I don't know what the other part, I don't think I've ever had enough ahead to where I was disturbed about it. But it seems like there's always plenty of everything that I've ever needed. So I understand that. Now, the next step, I said, is up to us. I want to read from Ernest Holmes. This is a little bit long. Just bear with me, but listen to it very carefully, because he has some points here to make that you don't always hear. He's saying man, or everything about man or his or him, is humankind. So ladies, don't be offended. Man then is given power over his own life. He cannot alter the laws of nature, but he can alter his relationship to them. All of those spiritual laws, we can adapt to them, even though we can't change them. We can go in the flow of them. Now, that which has bound him now frees him. Okay? He has been given the prerogative of spontaneous thinking. He has been given the ability to initiate a chain of causation. The cause and effect type thing, but we're on the cause end of this statement. He announces his own activity, whether good or bad. We announce our own activity. This activity is an activity of divine mind operating through him. It is original, creative cause doing something new through him. Decide what thought to follow, knowing that the result is automatic. What I like about it is the automatic. It's not like we pictured, I think I might have pictured 50 years ago, God in heaven deciding what and which and what. It's as though everything is put into motion, and we can begin to have a spiritual life or follow a spiritual pathway, or we can make up our own way. And I've done both. I've done both. Trust me, the spiritual pathway is better. But to start with, we must make certain that we are on a spiritual path. This is so critical, and it is the natural thing. If a person has lived the whole life contrary to this idea and then suddenly begins to discover a spiritual path, like in Jesus saying, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. Think about that. That's the words of Jesus, and that is the words that we absorb when we begin to initiate a spiritual pathway for ourselves. And it won't be like anybody else's. This is the thing, that we are so individual and unique. I can look out here and say there's not another one like any one of you. Not another one anywhere on the planet or has ever been. Because we are that unique idea from the mind of God. And so part of this whole thing then is treating ourselves like we are a unique idea from the mind of God. There was a word in the statement of Jesus that I've thought a lot about this. I've looked in dictionaries, I've looked in many different translations of the Bible, because I think that it's a little bit more than what it appears to be. What do you think of when you hear the word like, seek ye the kingdom of God and his righteousness? Well, the thing that I've always thought of is that it's just like God is perfect. Righteousness means like holiness, completeness, all of these things that it could be. But what if we took a look at it from another point of view, just a little bit different point of view, and say, instead of righteousness, what if we say right thinking? Because here's what happens. It's the way we have developed our style of thinking and the way we see the world out there as a result of that thinking. See, what we do, we develop a belief system. Whether it's right or wrong, it's the one we have. And we begin to think in terms more of that, from that belief system, as opposed to leaving ourselves open and letting Spirit lead us into right thinking. Because when we say Spirit, we're not talking about some faraway thing. We're talking about the very God energy that is in every cell of our body and in our space, directing us or trying to direct us. I've had times when the observer within me was saying, Glenn, this was not a good idea, or this is not, and I went ahead and tried my idea. Turned out the observer within me is always right. How is that? We would like to be right on our own little earthly level every once in a while, wouldn't we? But following that inner guide is the way. So finding a spiritual pathway is just that. It is following all this inner information that God has placed within us. It's not just God placing within it, it's God within us that we could say is guiding us. That other dimension, that spiritual dimension of ourselves, is trying to put us on a right path to where when we are praying, make my bank account fat and my body thin, it's acting upon it. Spirit acts on the level of our thoughts. So if we have this thing about ourselves that we don't trust, in other words, we're looking at our life and we're saying, look at the mistakes I've made, look at this. Those are things, it's just like the prodigal. What if he had spent his time thinking and being guilty and all of these things, and that just went on and on and on? There had to come a time when he got up out of what he was doing and headed in the right direction, headed with a pathway, and then discovered there are all of the blessings. They're out there for every one of us in every area, because I know that when I'm doing the little thing of affirmations, I'm putting down things like, I am perfect health. I'm affirming that into the universe, into this spiritual universe. I am perfect health. The present condition may not show it, but I don't think Spirit listens to that. I think when we affirm, we are affirming into this energy as though it's the absolute truth, and it is, because behind a physical ailment is a perfect spiritual image of who you really are. It's hard to get used to seeing ourselves like that, but we need to do that. And then the other thing that I never forget to do is I affirm that this is a year that all the money I need will flow into me and that I will use it well. Think about that. It seems like that money isn't that big an issue spiritually if you're thinking about just living a spiritual life. But I want to tell you, when it comes time to write the checks to pay your bills, It's pretty important. And when you decide what type of life you deserve, well, that's what determines the level. I've had this saying that's been in my mind for years. I know I've mentioned it several times. But God's job is running your cup over. Your job and my job is building a bigger cup, or a cup that will fulfill all of our needs. It'll still run over. But if you bring a thimble, and a lot depends, like I said, on how we think. So what we're doing, we're elevating the way we see ourselves, knowing that God sees us as perfect. When the prodigal was walking up, he didn't have any shoes left. I can imagine his clothes were so tattered. I can just see his hair like a scarecrow, like me when I get up in the morning, coming back to the Father. And the Father doesn't notice any of that, because God looks at that perfection that he put within us in the beginning. You see, when we arrived on the planet, we are perfection in spirit. And God sees through all of the muck, or all of the stuff that can or may not bring us down. Okay. Now, we're on a spiritual path, and we're seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. But we're trying to think right. Do right thinking. Okay. To me, the most positive spiritual path is to create a more personal and intimate relationship with Spirit. It's like what happens to you is you become like best friends. You really are just one, because that's one of the things when I was writing my stuff out. Spirit and I are one, and not any wishy-washy about it, an absolute statement. Spirit, it's the truth. Now what's happening, I'm trying to get my life to go in that direction that I have affirmed, you see. And by affirming it, we are led with it's like a stronger hand. There's so much help for us out there, so much to partake of, but it's up to us. It's up to us affirming that we are one with Spirit, and it's then developing a personal relationship. It's like you're having a conversation all day long with God, with Spirit, with the energy within you. I can't remember what it was, but whatever pain it was went away. And I'm saying to Spirit, even beyond that, I'm thanking every cell of my body, thank you. I would thank you individually, but there's 2 billion of you, so I really said that. That was. Okay. The next step is to do away with all of the dumb ideas about guilt and unworthiness. There is another thing that I would do away with, is the I can'ts out of my life and turn them over to the I can. Henry Ford was the one who said, if you believe you can, you're right. If you believe you can't, you're right. So it's whatever you believe about that. But part of the new year, we're turning over the I can'ts to the I cans. And especially if we're trying to elevate our place in the financial world, like at work or whatever. If we have that knowledge that we may not have made the right effort, but the knowing is within, to do whatever we need to do, even if it's to find something else and go another direction with our lives. We have the power within us to do this. Now, we get rid of the dumb ideas, the I can'ts. And this is another thing that I'm thinking about now. I fortunately have had a series of wonderful years, but no matter how good or how bad last year was, it's history. We don't need to dwell on that. We just need to know that God The God experience is a present moment experience. That's what it is. So when we're taking a fresh new look at all of this, keep that in mind. Keep all these things in mind. You've heard them all before, and you know them all. I'm just reminding you that's my only job to do. But affirm you're good. Start out with an absolute. What we do, we don't beg, we affirm when we're dealing with spirit, because it's not like God sitting on a throne. It is like the air about us filled with the God presence. If you'll notice the Lord's Prayer, and it's very interesting that so many people repeat it. He didn't say, this is the prayer you pray. He said, this is how you do it. And then there was a series of very affirming things. Most of what Jesus taught was in an affirmation. And that's why he's teaching us, like, whatever I do, you do. In other words, follow my lead. And one other thing, and I heard it in a song. I think it was in one of the earlier songs when it was like, it is not I. Am I right? It is not I. It's spirit. And this is what Jesus said. He said, it's not me doing this. It's the Father within me that is doing the works that I'm doing. Once we learn that, then we're not thinking about our limitations. We're thinking about the unlimited possibilities. So the Lord's Prayer is an example of that. Well, part of the things that I have experienced this year that I want to tell you about a little bit here. My relationships have been wonderful beyond anything that I dreamed about. About any idea that I had, my relationships have gone beyond that. And I have had wonderful health. It just seems like that has just been a thing. I think that I've affirmed it so many times that Spirit has said he's not going to change his mind. But I have to say, financially, this probably wasn't the best year, but I had 6 wonderful years before this, so that made up for it. But it was exactly what it's supposed to be, because this is part of the clue. Wherever you are right now, accept it as okay, because it's a starting point. Deepak Chopra wrote that if you are at odds with the present moment, it's as though you're against the whole universe. That accepting right now as okay. This is what I've created right now, but I think that next year I'm going to create a little differently than I did this year. So now I want to leave you with a thought, including all of you. The people in my life right now are pure treasure. And if I can see you that way and see that element, it's just like the last song before I came up here. That just bowled me over, the beauty of that song, because I knew that all of you were singing from the heart. It felt like it. It just didn't feel like notes and words. It felt like something that God would be directing to me. It really did. It felt like a God experience. Okay. God's good is much more available than we ever could have dreamed. This is the good that I want to be filling your lives this year. Thank you.